I have this absolutely stunning piece of furniture, and in today's video, I'm going to give it a whole new look using the new Kacha furniture paint. Can you believe that I found this piece of furniture listed on Facebook Marketplace and went and picked it up for only $30? Once I saw the listing, I knew I just had to have this piece. I am such a sucker for the French provincial style pieces of furniture, and especially ones that have lots of extra detail on them. This one has some wear and tear and dust all over, but I have something very special in mind for this piece. The first step to flipping furniture is to remove the original hardware and to give the piece a good clean, so let's start there. Okay, so this piece has a lot of dust on it and dirt. You can see it, but even if you can't see it on pieces of furniture, trust me, it's there, so you should always clean your piece first. I cleaned everything on this piece inside and out, and while you do a thorough cleaning, it's a great time to do a full inspection so you can get a list started of all the repairs that you will need to make. Sometimes when flipping furniture, you can find some pretty interesting things inside dresser drawers. Well, this is fabulous. Too bad they both weren't in there. After cleaning, it's always a good idea to come back with a damp, lint-free cloth and wipe away any remaining cleaning residue that might be left on that surface. Now that this dresser is nice and clean, let's move on to the next few steps, and that is repairs and scuff sanding. Now, this dresser is MDF and has had some previous water damage, so there are some lifted up bubble areas on this top surface. I sanded those smooth first with some 80 grit sandpaper, and then I came back with some 120 grit sandpaper and I scuff sand the entire surface. Now, scuff sanding isn't very fun, but it is a very necessary step to get that adhesion that you want for your paint and primer. As I sand, you can see where it changes from wooden brown to that white powder, and that's exactly what you're going for when you scuff sand. I don't want to remove the old finish or all the previous top coat. Right here, I'm just going over the surface and removing that last layer of previous top coat only. Luckily, I have a ServPrep sander that comes with foam abrasive pads, so I can easily sand all these curvy details, but you don't have to go out and buy the fancy, most expensive sander on the market. There are foam pads that you can attach to regular sanders that you can purchase on Amazon, which works just as well. Now, I didn't completely get away with zero hand sanding, but luckily it was minimal, maybe 2 minutes of just sanding a little bit around the bottom of the legs. Now that I've created all that sanding dust, it has to go away before the next step. So I like to grab my vacuum and go over the piece first to get the nice loose dust, and then I come back with a damp microfiber cloth and wipe away that remaining dust residue on the surface. So exposed MDF areas can have an uneven texture, and the way that I like to repair that is to put a nice layer of Bondo on top of those spots. Bondo comes separated in 2 separate parts that you have to mix together really well before use. I applied a thin layer over the exposed MDF areas, as well as filled in any gouges left by the old handles. Once the Bondo has set, I come back with some 120 grit sandpaper and just go over those areas until they are nice and smooth. So even though those exposed MDF areas now have a layer of Bondo on top of them, I use water-based products, and if any water product or any water at all gets inside and touches that MDF, it will make it swell and bubble up again. So this is what I do to help prevent that. I sprayed 2 coats of clear shellac on just the Bondo covered MDF exposed areas, and then I let that set overnight. All right, now it's time to start spraying this piece of furniture. I have a new area set up to where I can spray pieces of furniture again, so let's go check it out. My sister recently moved to the small town that I moved to, and her place came with a workshop that she didn't really need, so I'm so thankful that she's allowed me to use part of her workshop for my spray booth. It definitely needs some work to get it exactly to where I want it to be, but it is sufficient and will work for now. Y'all, it has been 8 months since I have sprayed my last piece of furniture, so I am so excited to finally be able to start spraying furniture again. Now, this piece of furniture I do plan on selling, and all my pieces of furniture that I intend to sell, I like to prime before paint. So the next step is primer. The primer I'm spraying today is Kiehl's Primer, and I typically use this in the gray. This is the white, so this is my first time using this product, and I didn't have any bleed through with it, so I was very happy. Up until this point, this piece has been a lot of work getting it ready and prepping. And not that spraying paint isn't a lot of work, because it is, but it's nice to see the transformation and the change finally starting to happen here. After one coat of paint, you can see that there are areas of the dark finish still coming through, so I did have to do 2 coats of primer on this piece, which is typical. After the primer was dry, I grabbed my 220 grit sanding sponge and went over the surface. And I'm not trying to remove the primer, I'm just knocking back any little bumpies that might have dried or landed on the surface during the spray process. I don't always show this part, but I do it between every layer of primer, paint, and top coat when spraying. After primer, the next step is to paint. Finally, to the product that I'm excited to try. A few weeks ago, Katja released her furniture paint, and I am testing out spraying it today. I loaded it into my canister and then added just a little bit of water. It didn't need very much at all. Mix that thoroughly, and then it's ready to start spraying. So the first thing I noticed about this paint is that you don't have to water it down hardly at all to start spraying it. Second of all, the coverage is fantastic. I ended up spraying 2 coats of this paint for good measure, but to be honest, I had solid coverage with just 1 coat of paint. Another thing I noticed spraying this paint is that the self-leveling is amazing. I ended up with no weird spray patterns or texture at all. The color choices are amazing, and the price, I was blown away by the price of this paint. Great quality for a fantastic price. And no, this video isn't sponsored. I bought this paint with my own money, but I was just really happy with the price and performance of this paint. Typically, after you paint a piece of furniture, the next step is to do top coat and protection. I want to use wax for my top coat, but I also want to decoupage this piece. So my next step is to decoupage on this flip. I found this decoupage paper on Etsy. It's Sepia Rose Song is the name of the decoupage paper. And when I saw Katja's Dusty Pink and then I saw this decoupage paper, I knew they had to go together. To adhere this paper to the dresser, I am using Katja's top coat in the matte finish. I remember before I used my first decoupage paper, I was really intimidated by them and thought I was going to mess it up and make a big, huge mess. And the process is pretty simple. You put on a layer of your adhesive or top coat is what I'm using in this case. You line the paper up as best as possible and stick it on there. Use a very sharp razor blade to cut the excess edges, and then I come in with a piece of plastic and work out the air bubbles. It's that simple. Top coat, put the paper in place, cut the excess, and then to add extra protection to the paper, I come back with one more layer of that clear top coat. And then let it dry. It's that simple. Not intimidating. It adds beautiful touches to pieces. Now, I don't know what's happening to my lighting, but it looks like I am sanding all day and it's just getting darker and darker. But sanding this literally took less than a minute to sand and wipe the dust away. When you work with chalk paint, you definitely want to give it a nice sand with some 400 grit before you do top coat. All right, now we can move on to the next step, and that's protecting it with some wax. Today I'm using Annie Sloan wax, and I start with the clear wax first. I apply in a section a layer of wax, come back with a microfiber cloth, wipe away the excess clear wax, and then I come in with dark wax over the area that I just did the clear wax on. So I don't let it dry or set, just straight into the dark wax. I go over everything and especially concentrating on the detailed areas. Then I come back with some fine grade steel wool. On the flat areas, I just kind of blend in the wax. And then on the detailed areas, I make sure to wipe off on the lifted and keep it down in the details. This process will add some depth and mood over all the painted areas, so the mood is cohesive and matches what is going on in that decoupage print that I like so much. Would you believe that at one point I was also scared to use dark wax on pieces as well? I've come a long way. Flipping furniture is definitely a growing journey. Now, when you use wax, you want to let it set and dry and then grab a lint-free cloth and give it a nice good buff to the level of sheen that you want. Now, I can't try out Katcha Furniture paint, especially since I'm using a pink color of Katcha Furniture paint and not add some gold. So the next step in this flip is to add some gold gilding wax. The brand of gilding wax I'm using today is Dixie Belle. Now I have about 3 or 4 different brands of different gilding waxes and they're different shades of gold. And how I decide what I want to use, I have a stick with all my gold gilding waxes on it, and I hold it up to the piece and just decide which color matches best. But I add the gold gilding wax here and there. I decide the little square parts on the front of the drawers just needed something extra, so I grabbed my French lettering stencil and add a little bit of gold words to the front of those drawers. So I said that I added the gold here and there, but let's be honest, I kind of went nuts with it, but I love the final look. All right, the last step in this flip is to clean out the inside of the drawers and then add the new handles that I picked out. Yes, we made it here to the end. Let's take a look at our before and after. I really like to take it back to the very beginning and show some pictures of before we did any work, and then skip it forward so then I can show you what the piece looks like now. That moody decoupage paper with the brown wax and then the gold highlights all over mixed with that dusty pink paint come together to create this glamorous, beautiful, moody look. If you've been thinking about trying out Katcha Furniture paint, I highly recommend that you do. It's a great product and I give it 2 thumbs up. You will definitely see more of her furniture paint on my furniture flips coming up very soon. Comment, like, and share this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. That's all I have for you today. Until next time.